Hello. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This episode, we're going to focus on the question of whether there is still a stigma around mental health and all of the associated issues around that. My name is Neil Parekh. We are live on, let's now remember this, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, my website. We're also live on both of our Instagram accounts for Dawn and myself, and we're hoping we're live on Dawn's Facebook. So we will verify that in just a moment. But it has been a week. We've had some technical issues, and I am seeing it on your Facebook page, Dawn. So I think it's working. It's working on your Facebook, which is great. Um, what a week it's been. We've had several issues, delayed the announcement, but I will say, Dawn, that even though I didn't get the email out till last night to some folks, and some folks this morning, and put some of the promotional posts up today. I still feel like we got a good response from folks who are interested in watching the show and joining us, and that's really heartwarming. After now our eighth episode, we've done 7 episodes so far. And of course, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's of course very, very timely.
Yeah, and Kate just put that it's working on my page, so that's great. I was disabled on Facebook up until about an hour ago, so it came back just in time for the show tonight. So
Yeah, and even when I first tried to share it to your page, it didn't work. So sometimes technology works, sometimes it doesn't.
so true.
But thank you everyone for joining us. Please like, comment, share, tag a friend, let people know that we have this show going on. We are going to be focusing on, as I mentioned, this question of whether there's still a stigma around mental health. And of course, the whole point of our show when we started it back in February, um, the reason was to try and help reduce the stigma by talking about it, by being open about it. Dawn, and I say this, several times. I've said this several times. Dawn has been very open about her own challenges with mental health, and posting it on Facebook. And that's why I reached out to her, because I knew that she would be open to this conversation. I myself had not talked about my own mental health struggles and challenges in any kind of public forum until we started this show. I've mentioned it a few times on a Sunday show that I do, Sree's Sunday New York Times read along, for those who watch that show. But I never told people that I suffer from anxiety and occasional depression, and that I see a therapist before we did this show. It's definitely helped me, and I'm hoping that it's helped others as well. Um, One of the things that we are going to be introducing before the end of the month, so we'll get it in before the end of Mental Health Awareness Month, we are going to start a Shining Light on Shadows Facebook page and a Shining Light on Shadows Facebook group. The idea is to be able to share more frequently to those pages and to continue the conversation after these shows. So hopefully you will join us for that. A technical note: if you're watching on Facebook, please make sure to press play on the video so that we can see any comments you might leave. If you are saying hello, telling us where you're watching from, make sure you press play when you do that. Before we start talking about this episode in more detail, I do want to give a shout out to Digimentors, who has been supporting this show pro bono. When I first went to Sree and said I'd like to do this show, the first thing he said is to find a co-host, and I hit the jackpot when I found Dawn. Digimentors does digital marketing, events and digital programs, strategic communications, trainings and workshops, and we also help with staffing and recruiting. We also do event amplification, and are doing a lot of work around AI workshops and helping with AI policy, strategy, and scenario planning. So, big thank you to Digimentors for all of their support. Um, and we'll give a quick shout out. Kate was confirming that we were working on Dawn's page, so thank you, Kate, for that. So, Dawn, as far as some of the topics that we want to cover in today's episode, you wrote a blog post around stigma. My whole life, I've been dealing with the word stigma, the idea that people who have mental health concerns struggle to get out of bed, work, go places, get normal things done, often doesn't make sense to people with no mental health concerns. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I think I've been dealing with mental health issues for my entire life. And a lot of times when I say something, especially like on Facebook now, like when I make a comment about how I'm struggling or how I really had a difficult time getting out of bed or, um, you know, anything that seems to be like non-functioning or debilitating, people who don't necessarily have mental health concerns um, will sometimes say that things like, well, just relax or get over it, or well, just go do something, go exercise, or um any number of pieces of advice. And I think a lot of times those things are helpful when you're not in the throes of a really deep depressive episode. They're not helpful when you truly cannot function or cannot get out of bed. And I've just sort of learned that people who make those kind of statements oftentimes haven't had the deep kind of depression or anxiety or panic attacks or anxiety attacks to really know and understand what that's like. And that can be really really frustrating. And I often have to give people grace who don't experience that, and understand um, how great it is for them that they don't have to go through that. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Don, for walking through that. I do want to give a quick shout out, and again, before we bring on Tiffany, we actually have a number of people watching on my Facebook page, but those comments are not coming through into the studio. So I'm going to have to give them out a verbal shout out. Paula Kiger is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. She's a colleague of mine at Digimentors. Thank you, Paula. We have my mom watching from Hastings on Hudson, as always. Thank you, Mom. Um, Jonathan Borstein is watching from the East Village in New York. He says, or in my case, Old Book Row. Naomi Service is watching from the Upper West Side as well. A colleague of mine from Mount Vernon Unitarian Church, Lisa Napier, is watching from Southern Maryland. So thank you, Lisa. And Rochelle Philippek, my neighbor in Hastings on Hudson, near where my mom lives, says this is a great topic and offers us greetings from Hastings on Hudson. We also have someone watching from Xanadu. Where is he watching from? Uh,
oh,
yeah, this is Jim. This is Dawn's fiance, who's a great guy, by the way, but I'm not sure where he is at the moment. Um,
he's a great guy. He's
Jim,
a jokester. He's a
thank you
jokester.
very much, Jim. Appreciate it. Um, so we had Tiffany write a blog post as well, and so we're going to bring her on after sharing her post. She wrote about a lifetime of being judged. Um, and she said, when we were talking with her, I've dealt with dyslexia, ADHD, PTSD, family addiction issues. I really just wanted to be an ichthyologist. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. How did I end up here? Tiffany, tell us how you ended up here and elaborate a little bit on what you wrote. Welcome to
Hi
the show.
there. Hello. Thank you. Well, when I was very young, I started speaking early, and I had a pretty crazy vocabulary for someone who was 6 years old, and that was kind of my shtick. And I would say I wanted to be an ichthyologist, and everybody on the playground would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "An ichthyologist." An ichthyologist is a person who studies fish and ocean life and things like that. And I'm a stagehand. I work in the theater. I have all my life. And how did I end up here? I went to high school with Dawn, and at one of our many high school reunions, we were talking, and she asked if I'd like to do this, and I said, "Sure, that sounds great." Um, I don't normally tell people that I'm dyslexic, so that's a big thing for me to come out on camera and say I'm dyslexic. So I'm dyslexic. I probably have ADHD, but back when we were in grade school, people of my age, they didn't really diagnose things as much. They just put people in two separate classrooms. There was the MR classroom and the LD classroom. And I'm not proud that I was in the LD classroom, and I'm not even going to say what MR stood for because it's something that we don't say anymore, thank God. And
Wow.
yeah, what
I
happened
didn't.
with
I didn't. Sorry
hmm?
to interrupt, Tiffany. Just your LD. I was thinking through, and but then you said MR. I wasn't even coming up with the words for that until you mentioned that we don't say that anymore. I can't believe
No.
they actually named the classroom that. Wow.
Yes, it was
Wow.
MR. LD stood for learning disabled.
Yeah.
The word disabled is in there. But the other kids in the school, the mainstream kids, um, considered everyone in the LD and the MR all MR, and we were called. I'm going to say this horrible word. We were called retards. We were all considered to be retards. Um, I don't see myself as disabled. I don't think I'm stupid. I did for a long time think I was not very bright because I see the world a little differently than other people. But I know that I'm not dumb because of a friend that I met in high school that I was very close with. He was killed by a drunk truck driver, and that's why I have PTSD. Um, my father is a recovering alcoholic. He's 38 years sober, but there still are issues with that. You never really get over that. Anyone who's a child of an alcoholic or has two alcoholic parents cannot, yes, can understand what that's all about. And then I've always been very close with my mother. She's really made me who I am today and has been my champion and has helped me. Um, she has dementia, so I look after her. And my son also has ADHD and might be on the spectrum. Who knows? So I have a lot going on. I work full time as a stagehand. I have a parent with ADHD, or not with ADHD, with dementia. I have a child with ADHD. My husband also has ADHD. So there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot happening, and yet I still have to go to work, and I can't call in sick to work. They're not going to cancel the concert or be short one lighting person because I'm having an issue and I don't feel like getting out of bed. Or if my child is having an issue that I have to deal with and I don't feel safe leaving him at home, I still have to go to work. My mother wakes up, doesn't know where she is, still have to go to work. And most employers, if you call in sick, you can just call in and say, I'm not feeling well. But most employers want to know why you're calling in or what your symptoms are. Is it COVID related? No, it's not COVID related. I have, maybe I'm having some anxiety about leaving the house, or maybe someone else in my house is having anxiety or some confusion that I have to deal with. And like I said, I don't really talk about it openly very much. So this is pretty scary for me right here. Um, I don't really discuss it because I don't want to be seen as weak or incapable or as the R word that we talked about before. Because I'm none of those things. I'm very strong and I'm very smart. And I don't
That's
know if I've talked for the whole amount of time. So, yeah.
No, Tiffany, first of all, I mean, thank you so much. Like I resonate so much with like 90% of what you've said. And I think one of the reasons that I invited you to be on the show is because, we had a really good conversation about really the difficulty of being able to be your authentic self, right?
Hmm.
Because there's just this like um for our generation in particular, I think there's just this really heavy weighted stigma around mental health. And we talk about how this mental health awareness month, right? And like all these actors are coming out and like sports figures and saying how we should be more aware and we should be more in tune with mental health. But the reality is on a granular level, in our particular generation, our the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, that's still not an accepted thing to talk about. And I think we're so ingrained with the idea that having mental health issues, or like things like ADHD or dyslexia, um, is something that we can't talk about because it makes us weak, just like you
Hmm.
said. And so I was wondering, Tiffany, like what are some ways that you combat those types of stigmas? I know you talked about like you just don't talk about it, but are there other like coping mechanisms that you have that help you with that?
Well, like you said, I mostly just don't talk about it. I don't let people know that about me. And, there might be people watching that are very surprised to find these things out. I guess this is time to talk about Squeaky. I
Good
have,
time to talk
Sure.
about Squeaky.
I will let Squeaky take this one. This is Squeaky. I found Squeaky at a place that I worked in Chicago one day. I was in an abusive relationship and I found this rubber lobster and he squeaks. I don't know if you could hear that. And I thought it was just really funny. And I got way too attached to him. And he's been kidnapped a couple times, and he sent me postcards from places. He has a Facebook page and a TikTok page. He has 2,000 followers on TikTok.
That's
He
pretty
makes
cool.
no sense. He goes with me to every gig I do. Every time I travel, he's always with me. And so I'm never alone because I always have Squeaky with me. And that's one of the ways of coping is just doing something completely weird and having a whoopee or a fidget toy or whatever. Another way is, of course, not talking about it. And also, when I see other people struggling with mental health issues, I try to be as supportive as I can and listen to what is going on because a lot of times when someone commits suicide, that's the end game. A lot of people will say, "Oh wow, I didn't know they were struggling. I had no idea. I had no idea." But the thing is that there are a lot of people who are struggling, and it's very difficult to get help. Um, a lot of insurance doesn't cover it. And like I said, we don't know. So just being supportive of other people and just having my own weird thing. I also like to draw. I'm not going to show any of my drawings, don't worry. But yeah, those are for me. I keep that to myself a lot too. And just doing something creative is my outlet for dealing with the anxiety and the problems that I have.
Yeah. So Tiffany and I both went to Milwaukee High School of the Arts. And we both have quite a bit of creativity in us. Um, do you feel like Milwaukee High School of the Arts was like a place where you found support from people?
Definitely, definitely. Oh, there's
There's
Squeaky's
Squeaky's face.
Facebook page.
We're talking about the creativity, Don. This
Yeah.
is Squeaky's page. Squeaky shared the post for today's show, so thank you, Squeaky.
Yep.
And you can see more of Squeaky here.
That's
The,
that's Squeaky's new friend, Claudia. A friend at work gave her to me because he came off a Mardi Gras float, and the person thought of me, and I just got Claudia, so that's Squeaky there. Back to the high school. My son just graduated a year ago. He graduated a year early because he was just having such a hard time socially, and he was being bullied. Someone hit him in the lunchroom with a skateboard, and then when they got in trouble, they invited people on TikTok to come over to my house and beat him up. And of course, I called the police, and that was handled. But during that, I was reminded of how accepting where we went to high school, Dawn, was. People could be their authentic selves. There really wasn't any bullying. There was
No.
popularity, but I really don't feel like there was any bullying. I certainly did not feel bullied at all when I was there, and I struggled academically. It was very difficult for me academically, but socially I did just fine. And like I said, everybody was so supportive of everyone else, and we still are. We
Yeah.
we get together for high school reunions almost once a year, and we were talking about having them twice a year and just like having kind of a standing thing, because it's just so great to see everybody and to feel that love that we all had.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
It was
great.
very special place.
it is where
And
I'm
I was
just
sharing
really touched by
a
that.
comment
Someone
from
wrote some.
my mom. Shared earlier when you were talking about earlier in the show when you were talking about
Mhm,
how you were in different classrooms, the LD classroom and the MR classroom. She put
mhm.
this on Facebook to say that must have been very upsetting when you were growing up. Um,
Yes,
so
it was.
wanted to acknowledge that, and again, that part of that is just acknowledging how challenging it is to share this with an audience if it's not something
Mhm.
that you're used to talking about, if it's not something that you have opened up. It is a real gift that you're offering Dawn and I, and also all the people who are watching, um, because there really is. It gets down to that question that we're talking about for the show. You know, is there a stigma around mental health? And Dawn made the point there may be a difference when it comes to generations, but for our generation and when you're
Yeah.
dealing with people who are older, I think it's still very strong.
I think
Honestly,
especially,
it's
yeah, go ahead.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is terrifying right now.
Yeah.
I
You're
I
doing
have a
really great
degree.
though.
Thank you. I have a degree in theater, and I took theater in high school, and I've been in theater all my life. So yeah, I know how to act like I'm not freaking out, but on the inside, I am terrified right now that this is just out there. Now it's just out there in the open, and everybody knows that I have a learning disability and I have PTSD. The reason I don't share about my PTSD a lot also is if when I tell the story about what happened to me, people get very sad, and I don't want to make anyone sad, and I don't want any pity, and I don't want, like, again, don't want to be seen as less than. Every year for autism awareness, they talk about people not being less than, just being different. And nobody wants to be viewed as less than. And that's another thing that's not understood very well and is underdiagnosed, especially in women. And again, I don't want people to know. I have a job, I have a mortgage, I'm a responsible adult. Look at me out here. I'm fine. And now everybody knows that maybe I'm not so fine. And I don't know, maybe keeping an open dialogue is helpful for other people. And maybe this is inspiring to someone else, and know that we see you, and if you're struggling with mental health, keep trying to get help. Eventually, hopefully you'll find something. I know that it's hard, and there isn't much out there. And then we get into addiction, and a lot of times people self-medicate in order to deal with their mental health issues. I do not understand why I am not an alcoholic, because everybody on one side of my family is alcoholics, but it never really became a thing for me, but I could see how it could.
Yeah, Tiffany.
I want
Oh,
to,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead, Neil.
Don, I want to make sure people heard all of that, because what Tiffany is sharing is absolutely the truth. Literally everything she said in the last 3 minutes was gold, because we have
Thank you.
talked about this on our show several times, about how much, when you have anxiety, when you have depression, people with anxiety and depression are the best actors, right? You cover up in every way, shape, or form, because you don't want anyone to know what's going on. You don't want people to. And I had this conversation with my therapist actually this week, yesterday, going through a couple of hard days, and I didn't get some things done when I wanted to get done for work. And her question was, well, what did it? Could people tell? Is it affecting, can people tell that you're not getting your work done? So no, I hadn't missed any deadlines, but I just kept it quiet. I struggled quietly, and eventually worked through some of it. But Tiffany also said that she hoped that this was helping people, and I can assure you, Tiffany, that it is. Kate says that you're very brave, and I want to
Thank you.
appreciate Kate was our guest last week and shared her own story. But I think Dawn and I feel, I can. I don't want to speak for Dawn since she's here, but I'm hoping that she would agree that anybody that comes on this show or shares in any way, individually, one-on-one, in a group setting, um, just saying the words that you suffer from or struggle with XYZ makes it easier for the next person to say that as well. And Tiffany, thank you so much for being able to say those words out loud. I know how scary that is, because I was right there with you just a few months before. Don,
Yeah,
I cut you off earlier. My apologies.
no. I just, you said it very profoundly. Like, Tiffany, everything that you said in the last 10 minutes has just been so truthful and raw and thoughtful and inspiring that I am 100% convinced that this is why you were meant to be on this show today, because I think that there are going to be so many people that are so quiet about what is happening internally for them, and that can't share it externally. And seeing your ability to be afraid and yet still say that um gives people an opportunity to be like, oh shoot, I guess I'm not alone. I guess I'm not the only one that's like living in this horrible silence. And that's just that's a great honor to have to be able to witness that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and Neil, oh, he's back.
There he
I don't
is.
know where you
Okay.
went, Neil, but Neil kind of drifted away there for
Sorry
a minute.
about that. I might do that
Technical
a few
stuff.
times, Don. So if you see me
Yep.
drop out, I'm just refreshing my screen,
Sure.
because we're having a little bit of a technical issue with Facebook, but I want to be able to bring in comments that people are posting, and for some reason I need to refresh my screen to bring them up. So let me bring a few of those in real quick. My mom was correcting a post that she made that she meant to write sick, but that I'll put the full post on. Dawn and Tiffany, many employers do not appreciate when employees have mental health issues. They consider them weak and sick. She wanted to make sure that was corrected. And she also said, Tiffany, that you are brave and have a lot of strength when you're talking about your mental health issues. You have a lot of support from all of us. Naomi Service, another friend of mine from the Upper West Side, Tiffany, it must be extremely difficult to express your challenges. Undoubtedly, your candor is very extraordinary and relatable. Terrific composure. Terrific composure.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure you saw those. And that's why if I drop out going forward, Dawn, this is why.
Makes total sense.
A few other people watching. Nick Marin, who's watching from Alexandria and was affiliated with our church, Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. Thank you for watching, Nick. And he does make a reference that he says self-medication works in moderation. I think you need to be careful with that, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I've thought about actually as well. I don't drink. I've never had any alcohol, and there are times when I've turned to my wife and said, "Thank God I don't drink, because if I did, tonight would have been a bad night." Right? Like it wouldn't have been a good situation. So it's something that people obviously have to be very very careful with. Stefan Kaplan says, always here to support this great community for mental health that you are growing together. And Tiffany, you are now part of this community. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. And I mentioned earlier, Lisa is watching from Southern Maryland, and Rochelle is watching from Hastings on Hudson. Rochelle has another comment. I'm not going to refresh my screen to bring it in, but she says, your experiences have given you so much compassion for others. Sharing your vulnerability also clears the way for intimacy and authentic relationships. And she worked as a school psychologist for 30 years and will be a guest on our show later in the fall. So in particular, she knows what she's talking about. My mom has an MSW, a Master's of Social Work. It's not just Dawn and I speaking from our experience. We actually have people who have been guests on the show, but also who have worked in the field. You're just doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
And Alexis Randa, I think, is a friend of yours, Dawn, right? I can't watch right now, but we'll check it out later. So I want to thank you, Alexis, for sharing that. And for anyone who may have joined us late, you'll always be able to watch the full episode on the same link that you're watching on from the very beginning, shortly after we finish the show. I wanted to make sure we got through a few of those comments. And Apollo, another Digimentors colleague, is watching from Philadelphia as well. Thank you, Apollo.
I don't think I'll watch myself.
Yeah.
I can't.
I hear you.
I can't do it. It's hard.
That's great, but no, thank you.
Exactly.
And you were talking about your mom being a social worker. The irony is my mom is a special ed teacher. She has a degree in special ed, and she worked with people with brain injuries and different disabilities and whatnot. And that's the irony of all this, is she knows so much about all of it, but she can't do anything about it right now. But she was, like I said, she was my champion in grade school because she understood what was going on, and she had some kind of non-conventional ideas about how to deal with dyslexia. So there was that. And she taught people how to read, which that was one of her jobs when she was a special ed teacher, which is kind of funny because I read really slowly. I can read, but it's very slow. So it's good to have your mom there. So thank you. And thank you for all your kind comments. I really appreciate it. Because this has been very difficult.
Yeah.
So
Tiffany, in the beginning when you first started talking, you were talking about the LD and MR classrooms, and you said, I know I'm not dumb, and you said, but I used to think I was. Um, and you started saying something about how somebody kind of like helped you um to to help you to understand that you are not dumb, and that's apparent in everything that you've just talked about. Can you talk a little bit more about you don't have to talk about who it was, but just what kind of things helped you to understand that stigma was not something that resonated with you?
When I got older, I noticed that I was figuring things out faster than other people. And also, I noticed I had this friend that I had was probably the smartest person I've ever known. We don't really know very many geniuses, but this person was actually a genius. And I couldn't do basic math, but he would show me like some college calculus, and that made perfect sense to me. So, like, really simple things I have a hard time with, but really complicated things, that's a no-brainer for me. So that's when I realized that I wasn't stupid.
Yeah,
And I was just thinking about when I drove home today, I keep seeing these billboards all over Milwaukee that say, "You are enough. You are enough," which I think is great. But then I also thought, no, I'm not. I'm more than enough. I'm probably too much.
Yeah.
So I know I'm enough. I'm too much. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
is that.
I think that about myself all the time. Like, I'm too much for a lot of people.
Yes.
There really is a handful of people that can actually tolerate me on a full-time basis, and that's about it. I am too much
And thank
for a
God for
lot
those
of
people, right? Thank you.
thank God for those people. And you know what? That's my circle. Those are my people. I
Mhm.
love them. They love me. But I am too much for a lot of people. So I feel you there. Definitely. Definitely.
It's
Um,
okay.
yeah, but I'm good with that, right?
Yeah,
Like, that's
you're good with,
who I
yeah.
am as a person. So I've
You
made it
also
52
reach an
years.
age.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, not at
Um,
all.
you also reach an age, and I think it's like around 45, maybe, where you just don't care anymore. You don't really care. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, just all of a sudden, I didn't care what people thought anymore. Although
Yeah.
today I am terrified, yes, but also on another level, I really don't care. And it was so
Yeah.
freeing. Like, I really don't care what people think. That's
Yeah.
their problem. So
Yeah.
I'm going
Yeah,
to
for
show
sure.
there
this
is
comment
it.
that Rochelle said earlier. Your experience of viewing so much compassion for others, sharing your vulnerabilities, here's the ways for intimacy and authentic relationships. Our friend Apollo also says, I self-medicated for years with substances, and all I needed was greater discussion around mental health. Eventually, I got the right meds, and my world has changed. Stigma is measurable, and there is a cost. We must be evangelistic about breaking down barriers. And that's something we've talked about in other episodes as well, the role that medication can play and getting the help you need. I'm going to ask a question, Tiffany. This is not something we've talked about. You talked about not being sure if you have a ADHD or not. Um, I know that Dawn and I both talked about getting therapy that helps, and we're actually going to be
Mhm.
focusing on that a little bit more in our next episode, first episode in June. Has therapy played a role for you? Has that helped? Uh, have you been able to get that kind of support?
I have. I found actually through my union, I found a therapist. They were offering a program, and they offer mental health therapy through that, and that's been wonderful because I didn't
Great.
have anything before because I didn't have the insurance for it. Um, I have a counselor that I see maybe twice a month on the internet on like a Zoom meeting, and she's great. I think she's just wonderful. I probably should have told her I was going to be on here,
You
but
can tell her afterwards.
yeah, I could tell her, hey, go watch what I said about you, and how I said you were great. Um, yeah, and I can't even explain why it works. It's just good to say these things out loud, to just get out there and just to say things out loud, and maybe you realize something about yourself that you didn't know, or maybe it just is a release from the emotions that you're keeping in, because children of alcoholics often will stuff their emotions and not show their emotions. And this is a good way to just to air that out.
Yeah. And a shout out for the union. I know that it was important for you to become a steward in the union. I
Mhm.
worked for a union in Washington State. My mom is a retired member of 1199. I know the union plays a big role at United Way, Milwaukee, and
Mhm.
Waukesha County unions in general, and the relationship with labor. So I'm glad that that helped, um, get you access to care, because that's a big issue. Um,
Yeah, I
John, you
am
said
grateful for that.
last 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 show when you were trying to get help for your son. How long did it take to find a therapist?
So there was a 6 month waiting list because he was under the age of 18. And we actually we got him medication before we could get him actually into a psychiatrist to be seen. And it was only because my primary care physician could prescribe him something when he turned 16. Otherwise, I I have a great fear of what could have happened to my child had that not. I mean, he was on a very bad path and really needed some help. So yeah, that whole idea of how long it takes to get therapy, which is I'm so grateful for the pandemic because of Zoom, and there's now all of these, you can do things via Zoom and Teams, and you can get therapy that way where you don't even have to leave your house, and it makes it easier and more convenient for the person who's seeking out therapy, but also for the therapists, I think. There's just so many different ways in which you can now, because of technology, that you can get help. So
I actually that's how I get therapy through BetterHelp, and I found that works really well in terms of meeting online, being able to change the appointment as necessary, being able to chat with my therapist in terms of sending messages back and forth. So that the pandemic has helped with things like that.
my
Absolutely.
son does BetterHelp as well, Neil. I don't know if you know that, but
I
he
did
he
not
does
know that.
BetterHelp.
That's
Yep.
I
awesome.
did not know that.
Yeah, he does BetterHelp.
I'd have to say the challenge with online therapy, and I've talked to other people who've had this problem as well, is finding a private place in your home to do it, and finding the privacy and getting the respect from your other family members to just let you do what you need to do, to just leave you alone for an hour or 45 minutes to talk to your therapist. That's the challenge. Whereas if you go somewhere, then they can't bother you there. But that's been a little bit of an issue. And yeah, we're looking for someone for my son, and there's like a 5 month waiting period. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a real
it's
thing,
horrible.
and that is horrible, because there are so many young people that are in need of assistance, and they
Yes,
can't get it, and then they don't really pay attention to them until they do something really horrible.
that's it.
And oh wow, we should have done so. They need help. Well, where is it?
Yeah,
Bring it.
yeah.
Sure, okay, thanks, but where is it? So
And what if it's too late?
yeah,
It's one.
it could
It's
be,
one
like I
thing.
said, it could be a surprise, and here it's too late. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure,
Absolutely.
for
I
sure.
watched last week, and yeah, there was a lot of discussion about teens and mental health, and a lot of that really resonated with me. I get that 100%. And we got lucky because the first two counselors we had for my son were wonderful. They had that we moved on and it didn't work out. And the first two were wonderful. But that's the other thing, is you might get somebody that you don't connect with.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about that next week, or next show.
Oh, okay.
Next show.
Yeah, that's one of the topics for the next show, as a matter of fact. What a great segue. You didn't even know.
I didn't know. Who knew?
I'll take a moment and put the card up. Our guest is going to be, for episode 9, Reverend Tyler Coles. He was an interim minister at Mount Vernon Unitarian Church, where I go. Getting help takes a lot of work and some courage, is how we're framing the episode. And so we're going to be talking about getting access to care, some of the challenges, how we've approached care. I know that I've been seeing a therapist since college, different therapists, of course, and different modalities. And sometimes it takes a while to find someone that you connect with. In particular, when I was in Seattle, I was in crisis, and I was able to get an appointment with someone. But within 2 or 3 appointments, I realized that was not the right person for me, and eventually found someone that worked. The therapist I've been seeing now on BetterHelp, I've seen her for 5 years, and it's been working great, and really, really helpful. I know it can be challenging, so it's something we'll be looking at a little bit more closely. June 13th will be the date. Um, we'll also touch on the intersection between religion and mental health, because there's some issues there, and in some faiths, you know, Tyler was mentioning when I talked with him that oftentimes there's uh, a thought process of praying it away, and that doesn't necessarily work. We actually talked about this a few episodes ago when Indira Salmani was our guest. She was talking, Tiffany, her mom, who suffers from depression, and has struggled with it for 20 years. Her background is Indian as well, same as mine. And within Hinduism, that's like you do prayer to get rid of depression. Like that's some religions approach it that way. So we will discuss that, right, Dawn?
Yep, we sure will. We sure will. I think that's going to be a pretty rich topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tiffany, I had one more question for you before I think we're going to put up some stats and stuff, because I really, again, I've resonated with everything you've said, but in the beginning you were talking about this idea of like not being able to show emotion, right? Like literally not being able to be angry or not being able to be scared or sad. And you said like even happy, right? Like there's just this like level set. Do you feel like over the course of time you've sort of been able to get to that place, or do you think you still struggle with being able to show that kind of emotion?
I feel like actually, as I get older, I think it's expected that I be even more stoic, if I can use the word stoic, that I am less. I'm just supposed to suck it up and just keep going and just hold everything together. That's what the expectation is for women our age is, okay, you want to work full time, but you also have.
Oh, I think we might have. Yeah, I think we might have lost her. If you can hear us, Tiffany, you're frozen and we cannot hear you right now.
Okay.
So.
Oh,
all right. There we go.
No?
It just went off, but I'm back. I should be back now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I think you are.
Okay.
I think you are. You were saying that you're supposed to, women our age are supposed to be, stoic and push things down. So I'll let you continue.
Yes, that's what I was saying is, we're allowed to work and we're allowed to have our own interests and do our own things, but you better be home in time to make dinner for your family, and you better keep your house clean and take care of everything. And that leaves very little time for yourself, and it leaves very little time to seek help, mental health help, or any of those things. And people applaud us when we're successful. Wow, look at her. She's working full time and her family's great and everybody's perfect. And it doesn't work that way for a lot of people.
Yeah, I call it pushing the cry away. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
you push the
Sure.
cry away. Like, you get to that pinnacle and you're at the point where like you just want to scream or you just want to cry, and you have to push it down. You have to like,
Hmm.
and eventually, right? Like it ends up being, a massive breakdown alone in your bedroom at night where no one can hear you because you're, putting a pillow over your face because that you've masked it for so long, you just can't mask it anymore. And I hate that. I hate that feeling of pushing the cry away, pushing the cry down.
Or
Sure.
that's if you're lucky, or something will upset you, something really minuscule, like they're out of Snapple at the gas station, and then you just lose it. And
Yeah.
it's really not about the Snapple at all. It's about all the other stuff. And
Yeah.
hopefully you don't have a public meltdown or some other thing, and hopefully you can control when that happens. But that's the problem, is we try to control it and try to do everything and be everything, but we're human and we
Yeah.
can't.
I think about that anytime somebody bites my head off at like a grocery store
Hmm.
or, just is rude or whatever. I think, oh, they've had to push that cry down for way too
Hmm.
long, like
And
give
it's
them
coming
grace.
out
Yep, this is a
like a
bad day
burp.
for them. I try
Yes.
to always think like best intention, Dawn, best intention, like give grace.
Hmm.
Because I think there's so much of that walking around like almost in this zombie state because sharing feelings is something that we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But I revolt against that now. Now I'm like, if I'm gonna cry, I gotta cry. Like I'm just gonna
Hmm.
cry. And I've
I
been known
think
to
that's
cry at work.
best.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
known to cry at work. They call me a crier at work because I've been known to do that. Am I necessarily proud of it? No, not really. But at the same time, um, you know, I also know that for me is better. I would rather do that than bite somebody else's head off in a meeting or say something that I regret because I'm not expressing my emotion
Hmm.
in an appropriate way or in an appropriate outlet. So
Sure. Before we start wrapping up, I want to bring in a comment from Rochelle, and it might take up a lot of the screen, but it's a long comment, so I'll lean up just a little bit. She says the director of her clinical psychology doctoral program taught us that everyone has some form of cognitive unevenness um, or disability. It's the hardest during the K through 12 years when kids are called upon to be generalists and there are constant social comparisons. In adult life, it is much easier for us to find our own niches where we can pursue our strengths and passions and surround ourselves with the people who get us. Um, Surrounding ourselves with people who get us is absolutely the most important thing. This is going to be my twice a month plug for being thankful that Dawn has found someone who gets her. Jim, I love you, Jim. So happy
my
that Jim
heart.
is in your life,
Yeah, me
and
too.
I'll say that I'm thankful that Pam, my wife, gets me as well. Without people like that, it this would be much harder. This would all be much harder. Every show, we want to share some stats related to mental health. We give credit to NAMI and share their resources, their numbers on the screen. The National Alliance on Mental Illness. Their helpline is 1-800-950-6264. 1 in 5 adults suffer or have suffered from mental illness at some point in time. 1 in 5, 20%. Doing some quick math, the U.S. population is up around 300 million, Tom. Even if it's like what, 200 million adults? I mean, figure out what the numbers were. I mean, we're talking about huge numbers of people. It's really, really high. It's really, you know, we, at least we know in this show and the people watching, you don't know where people are coming from. You don't know what they're dealing with in their day. You don't know what they're dealing with in their week. Give people grace, even if we don't give it to ourselves, because we don't. We give it to others because we know they need it. Mental Health America is another group that has some great stats out there. 18% of adults have a mental health condition, over 43 million Americans. It's similar to that 20% number. Um, Nearly half have a co-occurring substance abuse disorder. We talked about addiction earlier. Um, and 9.6 million experience suicidal ideation. We touched on that as well a little bit as well. Mental Health America, you can call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. Their website is mhanational.org. And the final resource that we share on our show, which airs, of course, the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, so twice a month, is from RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Their national sexual assault hotline is 1-800-656-HOPE. Their website is rainn.org. Dawn and I, in particular, make it a point to share this resource, this stat. Every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Dawn and I are both survivors of sexual assault and abuse. We've talked about it on the show before. Apologies for not giving people a heads up that we were going to at least mention it, but it's become an important part of our lives, important part of our advocacy work, and it really is the motivation for this show. I co-hosted a show with our friend Candice Sanchez last year, interviewing male survivors of sexual assault. Every month we talked about the mental health impact, and that really is what inspired me to uh, think about this show and reach out to Dawn to be my co-host. So this is always something that we think about and talk about on our shows. Dawn, we're coming to the end of another episode, and another really good episode as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Tiffany, once again, we are so grateful that you wrote such a great blog. If people get an opportunity, please read that blog, and that you were willing to come on and share everything that you shared, all the bit, the story of what you've gone through, and also just the support that you offered to people. I think is just going to be so great and so helpful. So many people watch this show after the fact as well. So you're helping people who are watching right now, but you are also going to be helping people who are going to watch in the future as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
I'm
you.
sharing your blog post as we speak before the show ends. If people haven't had a chance to read it, definitely encourage you to check it out. Dawn also wrote a great blog post. I don't want to overlook that. Dawn, thank you very much for sharing that and putting that out in the world. The more we talk about mental health, the more we talk about even the stigma and calling it out, hopefully it will help to reduce the stigma over time.
And I just want to say one more thing.
Please.
Also, we think we reach a certain age and we don't care, like I said, but you can still work on your mental health after age 30. And beyond. And I think a lot of people think that, I have made it this far, I don't need any help or whatever, but maybe as we get older, as we mature, we realize things about ourselves, and we do need help, and that's okay. And it's
Agreed.
okay to get help. So you can't help other people if you can't help yourself. Put your mask on before assisting your child. That's there's that, and it's okay. It's okay to seek help, even if you're older.
100%. Thank you. That's a great way to end the show.
Great way to end.
Okay.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you
We'll
so
see
much.
everyone June 13th, the second Thursday of the month in June, and buy the squeaky as well.
Yes.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.